Welcome to our Delulu Girls podcast, where honestly, we just talk about random things.
It's just always something different, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, last week we wanted y'all to ask us some questions based on our needs and motivation. We had a lot come in, so we're going to answer as many as we can today.
All right, you ready?
Yeah.
So we should probably start by explaining what needs are, right? Needs are a condition within the person that is essential and necessary for growth and well-being. There's need support, like when you get food, water, or sleep, and need thwart, where you're lacking those things. There are 3 types of needs, which are physiological, psychological, and implicit motives. Physiological needs are things such as thirst, hunger, or sex. Psychological needs are autonomy, confidence, and relatedness. Implicit motives include achievement, affiliation, and power.
Yeah, and there are also 2 types of motivation that play a part in our needs. Don't forget about that. It's deficiency motivation versus growth motivation. So deficiency motivation is our physiological needs. You know, all is well until you are having a state of deprivation. Mm-hmm. For example, lack of food. This often results in tension and urgency-based emotions like anxiety, frustration, or pain. Deficiency motivation grabs our attention to prevent illnesses or even death. On the other hand, growth motivation is more subtle and can take time. It usually generates positive emotions like interest, hope, or enjoyment. It fosters well-being and self-actualization.
Okay, let's start with our first question. Does skipping meals because I wake up too late for breakfast or just don't have time to eat affect my physiological needs? Yes, it does. There are 2 main categories to maintain our physiological needs, which are thirst and hunger. So let's break these 2 down. Thirst is broken down into osmotic and volumetric.
Yes.
And volumetric. Osmotic is the loss of intracellular fluid, like thirst from eating salty snacks, which is the most common type of thirst. Volumetric is the loss of extracellular fluid. So thirst is due to sweating, bleeding, or vomiting. The process of thirst satiation starts at the mouth, to the esophagus, to the stomach, to the intestines, to the bloodstream, to the intercellular. There are 2 important roles within thirst, the role of the hypothalamus and the role of the taste in thirst satiation. The role of the hypothalamus is to identify intracellular shrinkage and to stimulate the pituitary gland to release antidiuretic hormone, letting the kidneys know to conserve water. It also directs our attention to our thirst. The role of taste in thirst satiation means that people will drink for 3 reasons. 1 being the thirst-related water replenishment, 2 being non-thirst-related sweet taste, having the incentive value, and the 3rd being non-thirst-related attraction or addition to a substance in the water. There are also environmental influences like people who drink alcohol socially.
Now, for hunger, there are short and long term. So short-term hunger process is the depletion and repletion of blood glucose and calories. So the glucostatic theory of hunger takes place here, which is essentially when our blood sugar levels drop, which will then cause us to feel hungry. For long-term hunger processes, that's our metabolic regulation and stored energy. So our stored energy is stored in our fat. The lipostatic hypothesis takes place here, which either results in hunger or fullness. So if the mass of fat stored drops below homeostatic levels, the ghrelin,
I have no clue.
Yeah. In our bloodstream promotes hunger. On the other hand, if our homeostatic levels increase, leptin promotes fullness. So a little sidebar. What even are, the ghrelin and leptin? We promise we know, we just don't know how to pronounce them. Ghrelin is made in the stomach and monitored by the lateral hypothalamus. When it is lit, it is getting the message that food is needed. Leptin is made by fat cells and is monitored by the ventromedial hypothalamus, or the VMH. So when the VMH gets the message, it infers food is not needed.
Also, keep in mind that there are environmental influences that can affect hunger, such as stress, the smell or appearance of food, the taste of food, I always can't say that word.
Variety.
The variety.
The variety.
The variety of food available, the simple availability of food, portion sizes, social facilitation effect, or the situational pressure to binge or diet.
All right, time for question number 2. Recently, I feel like I've had zero motivation. I do have a lot of goals like getting good grades and saving money for a new car, but it just isn't enough motivation. Can y'all help me come up with methods or something to motivate myself?
Yes, so if y'all didn't know, there are two types of motivations, extrinsic and intrinsic. Extrinsic motivation is when we need environmental aspects to increase our motivation, such as academics, work, or medical needs. How does it arise? It arises through environmental incentives and consequences, like food, money, praise, attention, extra credit, etc. Extrinsic motivation can relate to operant conditioning, which is the ways that we produce attractive consequences and reduce unattractive consequences. This can be done through incentives, which is an environmental event that attracts or repels a person from initiating a response.
Oh, talk about the reinforcers and punishers too.
Oh, yeah. Reinforcers are any object or event that increases...
Stop! Keep going!
Why'd you write... Yeah, twice. Reinforcers are any object or event that increases behavior. Positive reinforcers are something added as a consequence. Examples are your paycheck, trophies, grades, etc. Negative reinforcers are something removed as a consequence. Examples are turning off an alarm, taking pain medicine, etc. Punishers are used to decrease the likelihood of behavior in the future. Examples are criticism, jail, or public humiliation. Keep in mind, though, that they're usually ineffective and usually include side effects like negative emotions, affect the relationship between the punisher and punishee, and do not model how to cope with situations.
Alright, so now let's look into intrinsic motivation, which is our inherent desire to seek out novelty and challenge to explore, investigate, and to extend one's capacities. Inmates striving for personal growth. It is the source of enjoyment and vitality. Some examples include... I forgot I needed an example. Some examples include pleasure in playing a sport or volunteering. Requirements for intrinsic motivation are that there needs to be psychological need satisfaction, which is met by having support from the environment and one's relationship in the following three dimensions: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. The opposite of all this is amotivation, so literally the lack of competence, autonomy, and relatedness. There are also some hidden costs seen both extrinsic and intrinsic. So extrinsic interfere with the process and quality of learning. So when you aim for the incentive and are not actually attaining this mastery, you are less likely to challenge yourself or be more creative and probably quit once the reward is obtained. On the intrinsic side, it can be undermined by intrinsic rewards. Across different ages and situations, extrinsic rewards decrease intrinsic motivation. Along with the hidden costs, there are two types of rewards, expected versus tangible. Expected rewards decrease intrinsic motivation when the person expects a reward. Unexpected rewards do not undermine intrinsic motivation. On the other hand, tangible rewards that you can see, touch, feel, or taste decrease intrinsic motivation. They do not undermine intrinsic motivation.
Perfect. Let's move on to question 3. I have a part-time job which I have begun to hate. My boss is very demanding and doesn't listen to his employees when we express our emotions or needs. Do y'all have any suggestions to help increase my autonomy?
So first, we have to understand the emotions of interest versus enjoyment. So interest is an emotion that signals that our psychological needs are involved in the activity. Enjoyment is an emotion that signals that our psychological needs have been satisfied. There are 3 types of psychological needs to be fulfilled here. These are the orgasmic needs, where we seek supportive environments, satisfaction, so we avoid hostile environments, and frustration. We need flexibility. To increase your autonomy, understand that there is supporting versus controlling. We like choices and flexibility. We want control over our own behaviors. For supporting autonomy, that's an interpersonal tone of understanding, such as I'm your ally, I'm here to understand you, or I'm here to support you in your strivings. For controlling autonomy, this is the interpersonal tone of pressure, such as I'm your boss, I'm here to monitor you, and I am here to change and socialize you.
Alrighty, next question is, one of my favorite things to do is run, but I have had a hard time finding it fun. I find light jogs really boring, but when I try to challenge myself with running 10 miles, for example, I just start thinking about how much I suck and want to quit. Can y'all help me find the fun again? So before we get into it, you need to know what competence is. Competence is the ability to interact effectively with our environment. It is when we improve our skills, talents, and potential. It's the desire to do well on tests or challenges that leads us to growth.
Also, you need to know what flow is. Flow is a state of concentration that involves a complete absorption and deep involvement in an activity, like when you're in the zone. Flow theory was created by, we do not know how to pronounce his name, we're going to put it right here. And he wanted us to know what conditions create the perception of fun.
Yeah, so you also need to be surrounded by competent, supportive environments. These can be created by 3 different steps. The first step, provide clear instructions, like make a to-do list, make expectation lists, learning objections. The second being have guidance or scaffolding, like provide help and resources, provide examples or models, answer questions, provide tips and hints. The third being welcome constructive feedback because it helps initiate reflection, identify strengths and weaknesses, and provides a plan for future progress.
When it comes to you wanting to quit, it is because of your failure tolerance. Failure tolerance is when we seek many challenges in social contexts and we're likely going to fail. It is the belief that we learn more from our failures than we do from our successes. Failure tolerance has many benefits, like behavioral engagement and development in creativity, a learning outcome of deep processing, an increase in task performance, a vitality of well-being, and an increase in glucose control.
Last question, you ready?
Yes.
Okay, this says, I recently just moved to a new school and haven't really been able to make any quality friends. Is there any tips y'all can give me? Yeah, so this is what we call relatedness, which is when we look for people who can relate to us. It's our physiological need to establish close emotional bonds with other people. We have a desire to give and receive care, and to love and be loved. So how can you increase that? Have social interactions and meaningful conversations with people. Engage in partner responsiveness, which is when one of you gives full attention, is understanding and support, provides validation, and communicates. Finally, create a social bond where you feel like you can be your true self.
So let's also briefly talk about relationships. There are communal and exchange relationships. Communal relationships satisfy relatedness needs. There's reciprocal care and support. This would come from like friendships, family, or romances. However, with exchange relationships, they do not satisfy However, with exchange relationships, they do not satisfy relatedness needs. There's little, if any, or care or support for other people. This would have come from acquaintances or business transactions. There's also a lot of benefits that come from having your relatedness fulfilled. You'll feel more engaged in the academic setting. You'll put more effort into class, and it'll increase your health because you can become resilient to stress, increase self-esteem, increase release of oxytocin, and have less anxiety and stress.
Well, I think that's all we have for this episode. Any last thoughts?
No, I don't think so. But shout out to our psychology class. We wouldn't be able to give y'all advice without it.
Alright, well, thank y'all for tuning in to this Delulu Girls episode. We'll see y'all next time. Bye!